Good morning and welcome to, I guess you might call this the weekend edition for the Ukraine Update live stream. I'm Brian Lusk. Thank you for joining me today. Glad to have you here. If you're just getting logged in, absolutely chime in. Let me know that you're here so we can see those comments coming in and know that people are actually able to see and hear me all right. In the meantime, I've got a little bit to start with here as we kind of warm up, give people a couple of minutes to get logged into the stream. Let's go ahead and move over to these posts on Twitter/X from Olga Onuk, who is a professor of comparative and Ukrainian politics, talking about the Ambassador Zaluzny announcement that happened this week. She gives her analysis, and she is saying that a lot of misconceptions are out there. I mentioned that I thought that Zaluzny was being groomed for bigger things. My theory being potentially being a successor to Zelensky in Ukrainian national politics. She's got some additional thoughts. Let's go ahead and go through that. Those who are surprised by Zaluzny being in the fold don't know full backstory and haven't been privy to info. Importantly, tensions were blown up to be larger than they were, not least as reported in Washington Post. Some of the reports were part of the Russian disinformation campaign from 2022. Disagreements existed, but not in the way some interpreted. Zaluzny is a patriot and is committed to being part of the team, and Zelensky wants him in the fold, just in a different role. You might not agree with what role, but that is not up to you. Ukraine's allies also want Zaluzny in the fold. More on that to come. Part of Zaluzny's brilliance was that he did not micromanage and allowed good leeway for his even more experienced generals to make battle plans, like in the case of the Battle of Kyiv, or according to Olga here. For this very reason, he is likely to do well as diplomat for the same reason. The post in London is a hugely important role. This is Ukraine's key ally, and the ambassador in the UK is key in coordinating military support for Ukraine with its allies. Having a former army commander will further help Ukraine and the United Kingdom's work on this. Most importantly, the logic of some interpretations should be unpacked. Just a few months ago, folks critical of Zelensky were saying that ambassador to UK was recalled because he was not close enough to Zelensky and not willing to follow Zelensky's orders. His dismissal was sentenced to obscurity. Now folks are saying that Zaluzny, as new ambassador, is being sent to the post because he is not close enough to Zelensky, wasn't willing to follow his orders, and the post is one of obscurity. The logic doesn't work in both directions. I think coherent logic is more likely. Zelensky and Zaluzny disagree on key things related to the battle plan, but not on major things in the grand scheme. They still are on the same team. There really shouldn't be any doubt about this. Unity in the face of threat has and will prevail. Zaluzny being appointed to this diplomatic post and gaining this experience can make him a future candidate for other major international roles. Again, we will watch this space. Mark my words, says Olga, this will be very useful for Ukraine and will be a key stepping stone for Zaluzny. Above all, this shows yet again that Zaluzny is a professional and patriot, willing to serve his country. It reminds Ukraine's adversary that you cannot shake Ukraine's unity and perseverance. That which divides us is not as strong as that which unites Ukrainians. And that's Olga's overall commentary on this. Once again, she is a professor on comparative and Ukrainian politics. She indicates she thinks Zaluzny is being groomed for a bigger world, international position. Absolutely a possibility. But I still suspect that Zelensky is looking at the time when he can finally step down, no longer the president in a wartime country, and be able to hand off the reins to somebody who will not only know the international arrangements there, but know the national and local situation in a way that nobody else possibly can. And I foresee that there's a lot of possibilities for Zaluzny here, even in his posting as ambassador to the UK, which is a vital posting, make no mistake. This is why the disinformation campaigns have so much trouble. It's because when you really start looking at the facts and dig into the facts, there's so much more than meets the eye when you're talking about these things. Zaluzny is a tremendous asset. He needed, however, to be off the front lines for a while, if for no other reason than he needs to be given a break. That's kind of what my thoughts are, is that he will become, to a certain extent, he'll be the face of Ukraine far more than Zelensky will over time. And we'll see how that pans out. Thank you very much for joining me. I see Jerry, Lucille, and Ozzy all here. Absolutely. Now that we've got a few people here, I wanted to just let you know that next week the live streams might be a little bit weirdly scheduled, and I might need to go to other places. My daughter will be spending that week doing preparation for her church mission, and she needs a quiet place to do so. There's pretty much no quieter place in my home than my office, as long as she doesn't let the cats in, as we discovered in streams the other day. So keep that in mind, that the streams may move around a bit, or I may be using substandard equipment and internet connections over the next week. That's the reason why. If nothing else, maybe it'll be a little bit interesting if I end up going to someplace a little bit that's got some different background than my normal map and flag and stuff like that. So we'll see how that turns out. Now let's go ahead and get into the news out of Ukraine itself. This is going to be, by the way, a shorter one today. Not near as much information to go through today because we've got, well, number one, it's less time. But it seems like, as I said on the title, it looks like Ukraine has managed to stop the Russian advance, at least for now. But let's start with some of the areas where there is still remaining issues here, especially places like Mirnograd, which was shelled by Russian forces. This is destroyed an electrical substation with 2,700 subscribers without power, and they're working to reconnect them to other substations and things like that. So, I wanted you to kind of see what some of these attacks look like every once in a while. Let's, in fact, make this a little bit bigger. These are the kinds of areas where these types of attacks are happening. They're residential areas. They're places that are being affected. According to Ukraine's UN envoy, the repeated strikes on Odessa they're persistent, they're nightly, pretty much every single time, every single day, there's additional attacks. The plan Russia's trying to pull off here is to close down the maritime corridor for exports by continuously attacking the place to prevent Ukraine from effectively carrying out the business. It's not working so far for Russia. Ukraine is still working on this thing, and there's a lot more to be done there, but seems to be their plan. Another photo, this time of Kherson, where a Russian aerial bomb struck this apartment complex. You can see it dismantled the front end of the building, and they were able to free up a couple of people who were trapped inside. This is they're striking just residential buildings at this point. There's just no way around it. President Zelensky had an interview with, I believe it's pronounced 5 Minuti, where he said basically the reason Vladimir Putin wants a pause in the war is to gather strength. We've mentioned this several times, and that is that the reason Russia might want to pause in the war is not so they can be like, okay, we've got everything we want. Let's back away. Let's step away from this. The appetite is insatiable. The only reason for a pause from Russia's perspective is so they can build more tanks, build more planes, possibly bypass some more sanctions, build up some more cash reserves, and basically gather strength for the next push. I've got a door knock. Please hang on for just a moment. I believe it's that button. Apologies for that. It may be the quietest room in the house, but that doesn't mean it is an uninterrupted room in the house. So let's continue on. We've got this post. This is for, I believe it's International Women's Day or something like that from the day before yesterday or yesterday. And they're talking about women in the armed forces. It seems that Ukraine has been recruiting amongst the female population as well. They've got 45,587 female servicewomen serving in the Ukrainian army at this point in time. And that's 13,000 of them are participants in active hostilities. This is something that Russia is refusing to do from a certain perspective, and that is the mobilization of their female population. Though they are certainly willing to go into women's prisons and send those to the front lines. So interesting to see, and it's really clear that Ukraine is able to tap into a resource of passionate patriots that are in their midst. Let's go ahead and move on to Russia. And by the way, if you're just chiming in, logging in, and seeing the stream, absolutely let me know you're here so I can acknowledge you and see what your comments are. I love seeing your comments and reading them. From the Defense Intelligence from the Ministry of Defense of the UK, they're talking about this Iranian surveillance drone, the Mohajer 6. It's an Iranian-produced uncrewed aerial vehicle. Let me see if I can get this up to a little bit better position. There we go. Perfect. This is an uncrewed aerial vehicle provided to Russia and observed flying over the Black Sea and Crimea. The Mohajer 6 is an intelligence, surveillance, target acquisition, and reconnaissance system, but can also conduct air-to-surface strikes with free-fall guided munitions. It's limited by line of sight. So they can get it to about 200-kilometer line of sight at 10,000 feet, and then they can extend that range by handing it over to another ground control station. They've been seeing this over near Snake Island and over near the both in western Crimea and just to the south of Ukraine in the Black Sea area. Likely is they're trying to use it to fill some of the gaps with the A-50s having been, shall we say, removed from active frontline service at the moment. They say the continued presence of this system in western Crimea is likely evidence of Russia trying to identify threats to Russian ports and vessels following recent Ukrainian successes. There is also a realistic probability or possibility its mission also includes supporting Russian targeting processes for the southwest Ukrainian coastline. Ukraine shot down one of these back in 2022, and Russia likely shot down one of their own in 2023. But interesting to say the least that since they shot one down in September of 2022, Iran has clearly been involved a lot longer than we kind of initially realized. They've been providing that hardware, and that's just showing kind of what to expect, I think, moving forward. They did show this picture right here of one of these drones here with its ground control station at Saki airfield in Crimea. So they know they're operating out of Crimea itself and to do these surveillance operations. Taganrog, Russia. A local plant is under attack. In fact, we can see some of the video of that attack being taken place from MASH. We've gotten some more information on this attack. There was a mass attack by drones that was launched. Some people have reported up to 50 drones being involved, though that number may be a wider area than just Taganrog. The governor of the Rostov region called the attack massive. but they said they had repelled it by air defense forces, with the likely target being the Beriev aircraft plant, which the state could have been damaged. Beriev aircraft, hang on. Yeah, the Beriev aircraft plant, there we go, let's go back to this, is where they refurbish and repair the A-50 AWACS aircraft right there. And with, two of them being shot down for sure, it could be that they're trying, and one of them damaged on the ground for that matter, they may be trying to refurbish or buff up anything they can, and maybe even working to put it back into production again, which should be interesting to see happen. Talking about the imminent terrorist attack, I have seen no updates on this today, but there was reports that not only the U.S. and the U.K. made this advisory, Canada, Sweden, and South Korea have all joined in. And there have been other nations that I've seen just kind of indications that they're saying avoid any kind of a big group, anything happening in Russia right now, because there's the possibility of an imminent attack. If nothing happens, this will be the biggest nothing burger I think we'll have ever seen. But they really believe it. There's something going on over there, and if it's thwarted, it'll be interesting to see if we find that out too. This is one of a Russian soldier talking about what happened with one of their assaults. And I'm not going to go through the whole video because obviously it's in Russian and I can't understand or read Russian. But the translation here from Albina Fella is, of our 3 assault groups, only 3 people returned yesterday. Our wounded were not evacuated. Barrier troops, which are the ones that basically stand in the back with their rifles on their friendly side and say, you better keep attacking or I'm going to shoot you, were set up against us. Snipers of the Russian army worked against us. Those who returned from the assaults alive, the commander sent to the attack without weapons, only with knives. This is just one more indication of the type of meat wave attacks Russia's performing. Anything they can do to keep making that territory. They're throwing everything they've got at Ukraine right now to try and maximize this period where the amount of Western assistance is low. It's just insane. The lack of respect for life is absolutely breathtaking. And I'll take a brief pause to kind of take a quick look here at the comments. Ozzy says, plenty of roles women can do, even more now that we are in the drone age. Absolutely. And that is one of the interesting, it's a resource that Ukraine tapping will be a great assistance to their war efforts. Even in World War II, the U.S. Would send the young men off to war, but then the women would step into their roles in the workplace. They'd be the ones putting together the ships, riveting the steel together. They'd be the ones building the weapons, doing all of the manufacturing work, the hard manual labor that men had been doing to make their livings, but before they were sent to war. So there are tremendous contributions by women to that can be utilized in this war. And that's the reason why I think it's a good thing that Ukraine is tapping that asset. Let's go ahead and move on to the international front here. Ukraine and Turkey signed a simplified bilateral trade agreement. This establishes an electronic preliminary information exchange system regarding goods and vehicles moved between the two states. Putting everything on a computer will make this data a lot faster to exchange and make things a lot easier and faster. The Polish foreign minister, FM, got to get that right, NATO forces presence in Ukraine is not unthinkable. The presence of NATO forces in Ukraine is not unthinkable, according to the foreign minister, because it is about Putin being afraid, not us being afraid of Putin. Again, this is how you face a bully. You face him head on. You knock him back. You stop him from being the bully. Then you get your peace. Ukraine will receive 4.5 billion euros in financial aid from the European Union in March and another 1.5 billion in April. That's under the Ukraine Facility Program, which is meant to assist Ukraine with the war effort. The Board of Governors of the International Atomic Energy Agency, by a majority of votes, supported the Ukrainian resolution demanding that Russia urgently remove all unauthorized personnel, including military personnel, from the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant and immediately return it to the control of Ukraine. So the IAEA is working towards trying to keep the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant from becoming either a target or a military bunker in this war. I don't know how successful they'll be, but at least they're trying. Remember, yesterday I mentioned that the Greek prime minister had been visiting Odessa when there was an attempt to attack Odessa at the same time. Not necessarily targeted. I'm not sure Russia quite can get that targeted with their missiles. But he did, when he returned home, state this: "We must have only one message to the Kremlin. You will not intimidate us. We will continue to support Ukraine and its great citizens as long as necessary." Finnish authorities have announced that, of course, all vehicles with Russian badges, Russian license plates, that is, must be exported from Finland before March 16th. That is, they've been actually prohibiting the entry of these vehicles since September last year. And this one I noticed this morning. House Speaker Mike Johnson and key House Committee chairmen are working on an alternative Ukraine aid package to address concerns amongst conservatives. The preliminary plans, including treating some non-military aid as a loan, with economic aid supporting Ukraine's government and long-term rebuilding efforts. Russian assets seized through sanctions could serve as collateral, and the loan program might have a generous repayment program. This approach aims to address conservative opposition to further U.S. funding for Ukraine, with concerns over the use of taxpayer dollars without a clear long-term plan. The proposed aid package could be ready for consideration after the government shutdown deadline on March 22nd. So basically, they're looking at turning some of the aid monies into loans instead. They could have made more use of the Lend-Lease program that they had going last year, but they didn't. So not Ukraine's fault, the U.S.'s fault. This just really shows that, I don't know, it seems like this is more about delaying than necessarily getting a package through. We'll see. We'll see if this comes together. And if it does, at least it'll be a start. There'll be a lot more to be done, but at least it'll be something. Moving on to the front lines, there's not much to say. As Null Report states, there has been little to report in terms of changes in the front line recently. Ukrainian troops appear to be succeeding in halting Russian advances around Avdiivka and repelling attacks near Sinkivka, Klishchiivka, and Robotna. Russian losses in each of these areas are high. Make no mistake, when there's no changes to the front lines, that lack of changes is being paid for with tremendous amounts of blood. The only change that Deep State map showed was this one change near Tonenke, where it shows the Ukrainian forces still in control of the town itself, but Russian forces potentially working on cutting it off. We'll be watching this one over the next few days as well. The Institute for the Study of War has been watching how things have been going and gave us this information here. Some Russian forces may have improved their tactical capabilities and leveraged limited tactical surprise during the final weeks of the Russian effort to seize Avdiivka, suggesting that select elements of the Russian military may have internalized tactical adaptations from conducting offensive operations in Ukraine. This is a change for Russia. Them adapting to the battlefield has usually been a very slow change. It's something that does not happen well. Often it will happen in one place, but the rest of the military everywhere else doesn't manage to adapt. Just it seems like they're managing, at least for this moment, to improve their overall tactical capabilities because they're looking at how they managed to pull off the win in Avdiivka, which was admittedly mostly bought with lots and lots of blood. Russian mill bloggers are absolutely incensed. The Kremlin and they said that they had kicked the Ukrainians out of Krinky, that they'd kicked the Ukrainians off the left bank of the Dnieper River. And yet, when they started looking at the actual details, these were flat out lies. And the Russian mill bloggers are absolutely insanely mad about this. It's kind of, honestly, they're probably mostly mad about being lied to because they lied to their audiences, promising that there were no Ukrainian troops on the left bank of the Dnieper, and yet that was entirely false. And I wanted to share this one. This is a Zytel jamming EW complex that is about to be destroyed here. These complexes are expensive to produce, have components that are hard to replace, so the loss of any one of them on the battlefield is significant. The Ukrainians are obviously paying close attention, trying to make sure they get all of these that they can. Again, the more they can take these off the battlefield, the more effective Ukrainian drones are and the more capable they are of dealing with the problems. And that's kind of the situation on the front lines. There's, like I said, not a lot today. I even only have one item that's in the extra category, and that's not even related to the war, which is the British Navy has reported that another ship was attacked off the coast of Yemen. 2 fatalities in this one. So it looks like those Houthis are not afraid of escalating the situation, which means that Iran is not afraid of escalating the situation. And gradually we're finding we've got another set of bullies we're going to have to knock back. And that's kind of everything. We're looking at the spread of war as things go forward. And the scary thing is, looking at this from a purely political perspective, this situation as it stands now could have been prevented. It could have been stopped if we'd forcefully responded in 2014. It could have been stopped again if we had forcefully responded in 2022. It could have been stopped if we'd forcefully responded in 2023, mid-2023. That would, even at that point, it probably would not have stopped the Hamas terrorist attacks. But it would definitely have put the pause on Iran and supporting the Houthis. So a lot of this situation is because we were not the leaders of the free world, we meaning the United States. And unless we can regain that position of authority, I don't know that there's anybody else who can. But that's kind of how things go. Thank you for joining me today. Glad to have you here. This one is a short one today. Nice kind of to have a shorter one for every once in a while, but understand that that's just because, really, it's because Ukraine has managed to fight Russia to a standstill. There'll be a lot more to report if there had been more if there had been more changes of hands on some of this territory right here. But understand that this means that Ukraine has managed to put the brakes on Russia's offensive. If Russia is able to restart it, it's going to be at the expense of a lot more of their equipment and a lot more of their troops. And that's everything for today. Thank you again for joining me. You have a great rest of your day, and we'll see you on the next video.